Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Thanks so much for being here with us. We got kind of a special hour to start with. Second hour, Tim Staples will be here, and we'll do what we often do on a Tuesday afternoon. We just open it up to any question you've got for open forum. But this first hour, we just are so lucky because we got a special guest in town. And those of you who know Keith Nestor know that he travels around praying the rosary with people and happens to be praying the rosary in Southern California and said he'd do a show with us. Keith Nestor's a former Protestant minister, came into the church about 6 or 7 years ago. He wrote The Convert's Guide to Roman Catholicism, your first year in the church. And that's what we're going to talk about what it's like to come into the Catholic Church. So if you want to ask a question maybe as a potential convert, you want to share your experience, just have a conversation with Keith about your experience of coming into the Catholic Church. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk with converts and potential converts. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Keith Nestor, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Cy. It's an honor to be here. This is an amazing place to be, and I'm so thankful to get to meet everybody here at Catholic Answers and hang out with you.
Well, we were super grateful when we heard you were coming because we knew we would get free lunch. So thanks for that.
It was awesome. Everything in California is just like the best of everything you have anywhere else, and then you add like a factor of like 4 to it, and you're getting to California level.
Really? That's how you feel about it?
Especially the gas prices.
Yeah, well, definitely. Yeah, those are way, way better. If you think
they're awesome.
Of high as better, yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're extra.
888-318-7884, the number. So last time we talked for the podcast.
Yeah.
And it's really funny for a cradle Catholic like myself to talk to a new Catholic or someone who's relatively new and realize there are things that we do that people come into the church and go, why are they even doing that? What is that?
Yeah, there's a cult. I just stepped into a new universe, kind of deer in the headlights look, because you can read all about Catholicism, you can learn all about it and get blown away, but then there's a whole other aspect of actually becoming Catholic that no one really prepares you for.
Yeah, could they prepare you for it, or do you think there's just too much of a kind of a long established culture that you just got to experience it?
Well, sometimes I wondered if maybe it was on purpose so that the cradle Catholics could have an entertainment value of watching the new Catholics come in and not knowing where to go or what to do and just watch, wait till we do this. Wait till the blessing of the throats happens. Watch what they do with that one.
Did that just come in, like you were at daily mass one day and they took out the candles and started blessing your throat?
It was on a Sunday, of course, and I remember going, what in the world, a Y-shaped candle? And they're going to, no one told me about that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things like
that.
But
have you had any problems with your throat since then?
It's been amazing.
Yeah, see? So, you can say that it's novel, but it's important.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that.
Yeah, sure. And it's funny, too, because I think you probably come into the Catholic Church, for most people who come from one of the Protestant denominations, and you come from, 3 Protestant denominations?
I've been a bunch of different things,
Mary, the Rosary, all of that. You probably even say to you in RCA, well, that's not essential. You have a choice about that. But now you're the guy that goes around praying the rosary.
I didn't think that would ever happen to me. I never set out to do anything like that. When I became Catholic, I wasn't even sure if I was going to be that kind of Catholic, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I was loving the things I was learning about the church, but some of the devotional practices for converts can be a little bit tricky.
Yeah.
And there can be some things about it that can even in some ways feel very uncomfortable. And I'm not saying that the rosary made me feel uncomfortable, but I wasn't sure I was at that level. And then, it started where we did this live stream and people asked me to lead it one day during the pandemic when COVID was beginning. And I just thought, okay, if I'm being asked to do it, I'll do it. And I kind of learned in real time in front of the internet how to pray the rosary. And I'll tell you what, it's absolutely changed my life. It's been, I thought converting to Catholicism, that's the most amazing thing, obviously. But the Catholic Church that I like to talk about is that treasure hidden in a field. And the rosary is one of those pieces of the treasure that when you take it out and you look at it, you're like, this is amazing. And for me, it's completely changed my life.
It was funny to hear you say that when you started praying it online, you thought you'd just do it for a couple weeks until the pandemic was over.
Yeah,
and then,
I thought I was really taking one for the team with doing it for 14 days, and here we are almost 4 years later, still doing it every day.
Yeah, 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
For
How'd
sure.
that go? 888-318-7884, the number. You want to know what it's like to enter the Catholic Church? Maybe you're thinking about coming in. Maybe you're on your way in. Maybe you're hoping to help a friend or a relative into the Catholic Church. If you've got a question that you'd like to ask Keith Nestor, you are welcome to call 888-318-7884. And here's how I heard about you. When people say, there's this guy on YouTube and he's just doing great apologetics, a wonderful spirit, and very loving and helpful and all of that. So how do you
thank you.
how does that happen that you end up being a YouTube guy that talks about Jesus and his church?
You know, again, it's another one of those things I never set out to do. When I first became Catholic, my priest told me, Keith, people are going to probably try to get you to do stuff because of your experience. Just take a year and be Catholic. Don't do anything. And I was great with that. Well, after the year was over, I started getting a couple of invitations to give talks about my journey or different things. And so a couple of those were recorded by the people that put the events on. They sent them to me, and I didn't know what to do with them. So I just kind of parked them on YouTube as a place to archive them and to get a lot of views. So when that started to happen, we decided that after Mass on Sundays, we would just make a video about any random idea, something I was thinking about with Catholicism. And a lot of it had to do with my own experience because I never felt, and I really still don't feel, qualified to call myself some kind of apologist. I mean, that's what you guys are for. I even say that in the intro to my book. I'm like, look, if you want someone to convince you to become Catholic based on apologetics, that's what Catholic Answers is for. I'm going to just tell you what happened to me.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that. Like, so I'd make a video about, here were 3 things that kept me from becoming a Catholic at first. Or here are some objections I had about the Blessed Virgin Mary, and here's how I overcame them. So I just began to sort of share my own journey about these things. And yet I realized at the time, this has kind of got an apologetic angle to it. So then I sort of responded to different questions people had, and it was just sort of a weekly thing that I did, and then it grew from there.
888-318-7884, the number. I am going to go to phones shortly. So if someone's listening, they go, hey, I got somebody I think would like to listen to this guy. How do people find you on the internet?
Well, if you just I have 2 YouTube channels, so if you go to YouTube and type in Keith Nestor, you'll find me there. But I also have the Rosary Crew with Keith Nestor, where we do our Rosary prayer.
318-7884, and as the popular figure that he is, he's already filled up the phone. So
oh my goodness.
Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Lacey in Pennsylvania, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Lacey, thank you for downloading the app onto your phone. Go ahead with your question for Keith Nestor.
Hi, Keith and Cy. So, Keith, I actually found you through Pints with Aquinas.
Oh, nice.
And I really love Rosary Crew. I join it every night now.
Awesome. I'm so happy to hear that, Lacey.
Yeah, thank you. So, anyways, I was going to jump into RCIA for this session, and I got cold feet last second. I come from a Reformed Jewish background, so it's just a big change. So I just want to know, I guess overall the question, what should I know before going to my first Mass?
Okay, so I think the biggest thing for you to understand before your first Mass is you have to understand what the Catholic Church believes about the Eucharist, because that's going to make sense of a lot of things that happen in Mass. For example, when you walk in and you might feel like you went to a funeral because everybody's quiet and kind of solemn. Well, people are praying before the Blessed Sacrament. They're praying before Jesus. So everyone has this reverence about that. Plus, that's why people will genuflect when they pass by the tabernacle or the altar, because they recognize the real presence of Jesus. So understanding that sort of will help you to put in context why a lot of things happen, why we stand, why we kneel, why we do the things that we do there. So I would say that. The second, I'm going to give you a piece of advice, though, about going to your first Mass. I'm going to say sit in the front, because it's so important for you to be able to observe what is happening up at the altar, what's going on up there. And if you kind of do the normal Catholic thing and sit in the back, you may miss out on a lot of things that are happening. And then one other thing I'll tell you is this. Ask specific questions when you run into something that you don't know what it means. Like, find out the answer to that, because everything in Catholicism in the Mass has a meaning. And the more you learn about why things are done.
If you sit in the front, however, at
Do
your
it.
first Mass. No, I'm not saying don't do it.
That scares me.
I think it's great. Just so you know, we're not playing head, shoulders, knees, and toes. We get up, we kneel down, we sit down. But you'll know what to do by watching what other people do.
Okay, thank you so much.
Awesome.
That's very helpful.
Thanks for
All right.
praying with me, Lacey.
Lacey,
Thank you.
if you'd like, we'd like to send you a little book called The Words of Eternal Life, True Happiness, and Where to Find It. If you would like it, all you have to do is hang on the line. We'll get an address, and we will send it out to you. Thank you. What a delightful call to start with. Our guest is Keith Nestor, getting well known on the internet for being the guy that goes around and prays the rosary, but also for talking about what it's like to come into the Catholic Church, and that's what we're talking about today. What's it like to come into the Catholic Church? If you've got questions, 888-318-7884.
Catholic Answers Live.
Do you have a question but prefer to ask it privately? Catholic Questions can help. Go to CatholicQuestions.com to ask your question online, email us, drop us a letter, or give us a call. Longtime Catholic Answers Live apologist and author Jim Blackburn or another Catholic Questions apologist will be happy to assist you. Catholic Questions proudly supports Catholic Answers Live, so visit us at CatholicQuestions.com today. That's CatholicQuestions.com.
Are you prepared to vote?
Citizens have co-responsibility for society. This duty especially obliges those in a democracy who must elect representatives to run the state on their behalf.
Learn more so you're prepared when you vote this November. Visit EWTN.com/vote for everything Catholic voters need to know before picking up a ballot.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. You're looking for that perfect book to explain the faith to a non-Catholic friend or family member? We've got it for this holiday season. You can get Why We're Catholic, which got more than 450,000 copies in print now, 6 years as the number one book in its category at Amazon, and more than 1,600 five-star reviews. Most of them are by Trent himself, but great book from Trent Horn. You can get it right now. For a great deal, too, just $10 over at shop.catholic.com, shop.catholic.com. Pick up your copy of Why We're Catholic. Next, to talk with our guest, Keith Nestor, is Ricky in Bellevue, Nebraska, listening on Catholic.com. That's our website. Ricky, thank you for the call. Go ahead with your question for Keith.
Hey, thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, Keith, I've been following you for a while now. In a normal sense, not in a stockish sense, but I really enjoy your testimony and your YouTube channel. My question would be, because I'm investigating right now, but I'm on the fence about many things, and I just don't know if it'll ever actually happen. So that's where I'm kind of at right now. But my question for you is, having converted, now you're in the church. What for you personally do you find to be the toughest thing about being a Catholic, personally? Not
Sure.
just kind of in a general, overarching sense. But what's kind of the most personal thing for you that today you find still to be the most difficult thing?
I will tell you, Ricky, for me, it's the fact that I feel like there's so many things to learn and do and grow in, and I just can't keep up with it. Like, I feel like it's this treasure chest that has been handed to me, and there's so much in there, and I just love every little piece of it, but sometimes it can feel overwhelming. And I'm the kind of person that when I get into something, I just become obsessed with it, and I want to learn every little aspect about it. I want to learn every detail about it. And in Catholicism, right around the time you feel like you're sort of getting a handle on things, there's something new and exciting that I shouldn't say new because it's all old, but there's something new to you that you go, oh man, how do I incorporate this or how do I do that? So I don't know. I mean, for me personally, I'm always feeling like I'm trying to catch up to where I want to be when it comes to my knowledge of the faith and my practice of it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that, sympathize with that. Sometimes you mentioned it as a treasure chest. Sometimes I feel like that treasure chest is overwhelming and kind of makes things complicated. And sometimes staying where I'm at seems simpler.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And I'll tell you this. One of the most important things that you can do, I feel like it's like when you go to a really incredible buffet. Okay, you know how there's like, you can get overwhelmed when you go and you see all this amazing food. And you can just stand there and not know what to do, and you're not going to get fed. And you know how some people are, like when you go to the buffet, someone will see something that they like, and they'll just fill their plate with it, and then they won't get to taste anything. Other people take little tiny morsels of everything, and they get a little bit of a taste, but they never really like experience being satiated by any one of those things. I would say like this: when it comes to the faith, you need to have a balance of that, and you need to like give yourself grace in figuring out what's going to work for you. Because there may be something that you find yourself really attracted to that the Lord is putting in your life as part of the Catholic faith for a specific reason. So maybe like for a season, you're just going to dig into studying a particular saint or church fathers, but maybe that means you're not going to be doing something else. That's totally okay. It's all there for you. And God doesn't expect you to become a master of everything. He's put different things into your path that you need at a specific time. So I just feel like saying sometimes just slow down, breathe, and take it as the Lord gives it to you. And instead of looking at it like you're at a buffet, like sit down and be served and let the Lord bring you what he knows you need. I love it when I go to a restaurant with someone and I'm in a new place and I just tell them, if that's where they're from, hey, why don't you just order whatever you think I would like? Then I don't have the pressure of trying to figure it out on my own when I'm in a new place, in a new environment. Being Catholic's kind of like that, especially as a new Catholic. You just need to sit back and let it be served to you, and then you go from there. So I know it can feel overwhelming. That's probably the toughest thing for me, but I'm always amazed at how God brings me what I need and gives me the grace to receive it in those moments.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Well, definitely keep me in your prayers. I appreciate it.
Will do.
Thank you, Ricky. Thank you very, very much for the call. The number is 888-318-7884. Keith Nestor is our guest. We're talking about what it's like to come into the Catholic Church. If you've got questions about that, whether you're coming in yourself or maybe you'd like to help someone else come in, give us a call, 888-318-7884. Justin is in Arkansas, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Justin, welcome. Go ahead with your question for Keith.
Good afternoon. My question is, so I'm a Protestant. I've been visiting our local parish here. They have a daily mass. I've been able to go about 5 times in the last 10 days.
Wow. That's awesome,
The
brother.
question I have is, I don't know, I guess the liturgy. I don't know what I'm supposed to be saying. There's a book in the pew, but it looks like I'm trying to look over people's shoulders, but they flip. It seems like they flip back and forth. So I don't know how, as someone outside of the church, what I can and can't do. Yesterday, actually, someone invited me to go up during communion and just receive the blessing, and I didn't because I didn't know if that was appropriate or anything. So any kind of guidance you could give on what I can and can't do, and maybe where I can get a resource to follow along.
Justin, you put your finger on a topic that's very important to me personally, because I was exactly where you were for a long time. And I think that Catholic parishes need to think about people like you and have resources available to help. And the best resource that you're going to find is probably that little old lady sitting in the pew that goes to Mass every day that would just love to help you. So sometimes the best resource is someone who you could say, hey, I'm new here. I don't understand what to do. Would you help me? And maybe you found a Catholic person in your parish that you could just sit down with and ask these questions about. I mean, there are places you can go online. I mean, you can look in the books, but the best thing to do is find someone who can personally walk you through it. But the more you go, the more you will just sort of pick things up. But it takes time, and you have to give yourself grace. And I want to just assure you of one thing, Justin. No one is judging you. No one is looking at you going, who's that guy that doesn't know what he's doing? People are not worried about that at all. So take the pressure off yourself and just kind of grow with it as you can. but just begin to maybe find someone local to you can ask those questions of.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Justin. Maybe we could send Justin a copy of Why We're Catholic. If you'd like it, Justin, just hang on the line. We'll send you a copy of the book, Why We're Catholic. That's the one I was just talking about that's on sale over at shop.catholic.com. But I'd love you to have it because that's kind of impressive. 5 times in 10 days going to Mass. And if we can be helpful, call again. We'd love to talk with you. The number here is 888-318-7884. Our guest is Keith Nestor, who has grown quite an audience on the internets, talking about what it's like to become a Catholic, what his journey into the Catholic faith is like, talking about the Bible and praying the rosary. And if you have a question about what it's like to come into the Catholic Church, your call is welcome. I got to say, I really enjoy this because Keith, I'm glad you're here to do this because I don't get to hear this perspective very, very much. You know, like I was raised in a kind of Boston Irish Catholic family that everybody went to Mass, everybody knew. And it's really something to hear what it's like for people who have not gone there before.
You know, I think it's like that with anything. If we just grow up and it's the air we breathe, and I mean, I would have felt the same way as a pastor if a Catholic came in and said, "Why don't we do it this way? Why don't we do it that way?" But I think one of the differences in like the Protestant world oftentimes is there tends to be more of a focus on trying to bring new people in and how they feel and what's going to speak to them. And I think that a lot of Catholics they just haven't thought that way. And
no, that's what you mean. Yeah,
they're just like, well, what do you mean you don't understand what to do? And I think we need to do better as a church at that because that's part of our evangelism. I talk to Catholics all the time, or I talk to Protestants all the time who are being drawn into the church, and they just wander into a Mass. And I know they would be so edified if they understood the things that were going on.
Right. Instead of it just seeming like, okay, why is the priest walking around the altar right now? Why is he lifting that up and putting that down? And if you know what's going on, it all has profound meaning, actually.
It does, yeah.
All right, let's go to John in Portland, Oregon, listening on Catholic.com. John, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Keith Nestor.
Keith Nestor and you, it's awesome. I just came into the church like 2 years ago.
Welcome home, John.
I still don't know the lingo, brother, from Protestantism. No, help me, dude. I'm excited to be excited, and we can have great music and have a great youth group and go do the rubber stamp. But I'll tell you this, man. Literally after hiking the PCT, God just called me, go to the Catholic Church.
Wow.
Knew nothing about it. As soon as that door was open, I felt like I was back on the hospital ship, that I was on in the Navy years ago. So what I'm going to be asking to a former Protestant is, how do you talk to Protestants? Because, man, they are mad at me for doing this. And they're like, come back. And I'm like, no.
Well, first of all, I want to take my hat off to you for the fact that you are still willing to talk to the Protestants because sometimes we can get so tired of getting beat up by Protestants, like when we converted. I know this happened to me, that when I became Catholic, I got so defensive because I was always being grilled by people, always being talked to like I'd lost my mind. So I had these walls built up, but I had made a decision that I was going to have a conversation with anybody who wanted to really talk to me and understand why I became Catholic. And those conversations were really healing in a lot of ways. Because I think a lot of the people felt like I had left Christianity and that I didn't love Jesus anymore. And when I was able to explain to them that I became Catholic because I'm totally in love with Jesus and he started a church and I want all of him and I get to receive his body and blood in the Eucharist. Like it's all about Jesus. They sort of kind of look at you like, really? And you can have these conversations, but I would give you this advice. Have those conversations in person or at the very least over the phone. Don't try to do it through emails. Don't try to do it through texting because they need to see what's going on with you. And just be patient with them too, John. That's the other thing I would tell you is they don't know what to do with you right now. So you have to just understand where they are in that journey. They think you've completely lost your mind. So let them express that to you. Don't get bent out of shape. Don't get offended. Don't get angry. Don't get defensive, and then just share with them the beauty of the faith and how Christ and your love for him has brought you there.
Yeah, I've got a shocking miracle to tell you. I called one friend who totally taught me how to read the Bible. His name is Kenny Burchard and Mary Jo. And he's from being in the Navy years ago, and obviously post the divorce, I reached out to him 10 years ago. I called him. Just say thanks for getting me oriented. Brother, I'm becoming Catholic. And literally, he just came out and said, John, we're Catholic now.
Oh, what a great story,
Praise
John.
the Lord, man. That's awesome. Thanks, John.
All right, right back with more Keith Nestor on Catholic Answers Live.
Why We're Catholic is the one book you can hand to anyone to invite them into or back to the Catholic faith. With more than 400,000 copies sold, Trent Horn's book has had a #1 ranking on Amazon.com for 5 years running. Now available in softcover, bulk cases, ebook, and on Audible. Find out what the excitement is all about. Order your copies of Why We're Catholic at shop.catholic.com or visit whywearecatholic.com.
Is relativism dead? It sure seems dead. Each day, new moral demands are made, and they are presented to us as absolutes. Everything, from transgender ideology to physician-assisted suicide, is presented as a moral good that all right-thinking people must accept. But Catholic Answers' own Carlo Broussard says look deeper, and you will see today's moralism is just relativism dressed up in new clothes. Carlo's eye-opening book, The New Relativism, shines a light on how the sacred moral teachings of this age cover up a deep denial of moral truth. Order your copy of The New Relativism today at shop.catholic.com and be prepared to defend the truth against aggressive relativism. The New Relativism at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Having a fun Tuesday because Keith Nestor is here with us. If you follow the Catholic, YouTube world, and there's some certain folks that you've gotten to know, and among them, very well might be Keith Nestor because he's been growing in popularity, talking about the faith in a way that's joyful and inviting. Himself a convert to the Catholic faith. From Protestant ministry about 6 years ago?
2017.
2017.
So, yeah.
And tell us just real quick about the rosary thing because this is really something.
Yeah, we pray a daily live stream rosary on YouTube and Facebook, and it's going on 4 years now in March. And it's been absolutely amazing. We've got an incredible community of prayers that span the globe. And we do it every single day on that channel, Rosary Crew with Keith Nestor. So you can jump on and pray live, or you can pray with a recording, or whatever you want to do. But it's taken us all around the country. We're driving around in our motorhome RV, just stopping in different places and praying with people and having an incredible time.
You can also get Keith's book, The Convert's Guide to Roman Catholicism, Your First Year in the Church. And that's kind of what we're talking about today, is what it's like to come into the church, what it's like to enter the Catholic Church. We'll go now to Andrew in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, listening on 94.5 FM. Andrew, thank you for the call. Go ahead with your question for Keith.
Hey, Keith. My problem is I'm really contemplating converting, but the hardest part is getting my wife on board.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because she knows that I'm really interested in the patristics and all that other fun stuff, but I don't think she knows that I listen to Catholic Answers all the time. and other popular Catholic individuals, but I don't think she realizes how close I am, and maybe that's a fault on my part, but I don't know how to communicate that well in terms of, like, hey, honey, everything we both grew up in and everything we love, in a way, is wrong or not the fullness of the truth, and I'm really struggling to communicate that with her and say, I think I want to convert. And I know she's the type of lady that would come with me if I told her I wanted her to come with me, but I don't want to force her into something that she does not want either.
Well, I think you should just play back exactly what you said to me to her, because you're not coming at this with some kind of, arrogance or you better do this or that. You're sharing with her what you're experiencing. And I think that your wife is going to treasure the fact that you want to share that part of your heart with her. And the way that I wouldn't say anything like, well, what we've always learned before was wrong. I always talk about it like this. Catholicism is just the next logical step, because you're growing in your discipleship of Jesus Christ. You want to go where Jesus did and do what he did. Well, he started a church. And maybe your wife doesn't know that. I know I certainly didn't as a Protestant for a long time. So you want to have those conversations and share that with her, but frame it to her not as a complete departure of everything that you've grown up in and that she's learned. Share it to her as the fulfillment of that and what the Lord is doing in your heart. And I'm telling you, as your wife, she is going to be so proud of you and excited that you're searching for the Lord, because so many husbands aren't searching for the Lord. And she's going to be thankful that she's married to one who is. And when you share your heart humbly with her about where God's leading you, I think you might be surprised how excited she is. And you're there in Sioux Falls. My son lives there. And when we go to visit him, we always go to the cathedral. So you're in a great spot. It's beautiful there. So I'd encourage you, just have that conversation with her and share it with her, and it'll be okay.
Andrew, thank you very much for the call. I'd like to give you a book as well if you'd like a copy of The Words of Eternal Life, True Happiness, and Where to Find It. I think you might find it helpful. Most people who have gotten it have found it helpful because Jimmy Akin wrote it. And so it's high quality stuff. If you want to hang on and we'll send it to you, you're welcome to do that. Just hang on the line. The number here is 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. What's it like coming into the Catholic Church? What can you expect as a convert to the Catholic faith? Maybe you're coming in from a Protestant denomination. Maybe you're coming in from Protestant ministry. Maybe it's not you, but someone else is coming in, and you'd like to know what their experience is like coming into the Catholic Church. Keith Nestor is here to talk about that. He himself, a convert to the Catholic faith. 888-318-7884. Going to Iowa now. Sean's in Iowa, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Sean, thank you for waiting. Go ahead with your question for Keith.
Yeah, I guess, Keith, it's more of additional commentary for a previous caller. I think his name was Justin. He was saying he's been to Mass a few times and had some questions. You mentioned get some help from a local parishioner there, which is great. But I guess I'm Catholic. My wife's not. She attends Mass with me weekly. And one thing that's really helpful for her is in the front of the missal, they have the order of the Mass. And she likes to follow along with that and then find the date, for the readings for that whatever day it is that you're at. And then also the blessing. He asked about going up and receiving a blessing, and that is totally okay.
Amen.
So I just wanted to share that.
I think that's great advice, to be able to point someone in that direction. I remember when I first went to Mass, I couldn't even figure out where I was in that book. So I needed someone to help me with that too. But once you get the hang of it, it becomes like second nature. Another thing I think that's really helpful too is if you can look at the readings ahead of time, so that before you show up, you already know what the readings are going to be, and your mind and your heart are already becoming prepared. God will speak to you in pretty amazing ways. And that's the beautiful thing about the Catholic Mass is you can figure out, what's coming. It's not going to be a surprise. So take advantage of that.
Yep. Well, thank you. I just wanted to share that additional
Thank
info
you, Sean.
for Justin and anyone else listening.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks very, very much. The number is 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. You want to know what it's like to come into the Catholic Church? Today is your day to call and ask. Selena couldn't stay on the line from Fort Worth, Texas. My daughter is in college. She's been invited to a non-denominational church. What resources can I give her to help her rediscover her Catholic faith?
Well, I think that's where Catholic Answers comes in, because you guys have just about every kind of resource people would need who are trying to rediscover their Catholic faith. But I would also try to get her plugged into a local Catholic ministry there on her campus so that she can have some community. Because I think a lot of times people, when they go to college, a lot of that is related to community and where they're going to find friends and where they're going to be with people. And if that can happen in a Catholic setting, that's also going to help too. So I would direct her to try to get plugged into her local Catholic parish in the town or a campus ministry.
Oh, I was going to go back to the caller and say, hey, was that helpful to you? But I can't do that. I can't do that because I just read the question myself. 888-318-7884 is the number. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back with more calls for Keith Nestor on what it's like to enter the Catholic Church on Catholic Answers Live.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
One of the biggest mistakes a Christian can make is to try to do good without God's help. St. Therese said, when we trust only ourselves and not God, our soul becomes incapable of virtue. Her remedy? Works of charity. And the greatest work of charity is to share the gospel. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we encourage you to share the gospel with someone who doesn't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Have you ever wished you could listen to EWTN on a local radio station? Maybe our Lord is speaking to your heart to help make that happen. Don't let a lack of experience hold you back. Find out how you can help start a Catholic radio station where you live, powered by the truth of the Church and EWTN's dynamic radio programming. Email Steve at this address, radio@ewtn.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Keith Nestor is our guest. And sometimes we make fun of this. We do this sometimes here. We make fun of some of the Catholic podcasting out there, which is enraged and bitter. And sometimes I think we generalize. But one of the great things about this media revolution is people like yourself who can share an aspect of the Catholic faith, particularly coming in from another, from other Christian denominations, what it's like, and I think it's just a great blessing. I mean, you have friends all over the world now because you pray the Rosary with them, for example.
It's been amazing. I mean, the Rosary. I mean, you mentioned kind of the Catholic podcasting space. There can be a lot of turmoil out there, a lot of people that are using that platform as a way to kind of express their own discontentment or angst.
Yeah. And,
I can certainly be given to that in my flesh. But what I found, like the Rosary, is a great unifier. It's something that whether you're a traditional person or a whatever person or any kind of Catholic you want to find, I haven't met any Catholics who say, oh, we shouldn't pray the Rosary. They're probably out there somewhere.
They're at universities. They're teaching at the universities. Yeah.
Well, when we come together to pray the Rosary, our community is filled with all different types of people, and that's what we do. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about church issues. We just get together to pray, and I love it.
Yeah. That's, and I imagine you have non-Catholics probably who see that as well, because I have heard quite a few non-Catholics say that on Catholic radio or they on a Catholic YouTube site or something, they hear the praying of the Rosary and they've just never heard anybody pray like that. It's not something that's familiar in most traditions, praying in that way. I guess it's a kind of, it's very peaceful. The Rosary is a very peaceful way of praying.
Yeah, it's interesting because you'll find people who who are able to receive it that way. But then you find other people who are so scandalized by the fact that it's repetitious, and they have this idea that Jesus condemned repetitive prayer.
Oh, right.
Because
right.
he said, don't be like the pagans who heap up vain repetitions.
Yeah.
But clearly Jesus wasn't talking about repetition in and of itself. The key word there is vain.
Yeah.
Because the Bible has repetitious prayer in it. But it's when people pray just with no thought behind it, and it's just sort of babbling, which sometimes that can feel like that when someone sees the rosary, if people are praying it really fast and it's all monotone or whatever. So it can have that impression on people. But when you really dig into it and you really allow yourself to go on that journey of the mysteries of the rosary, what I've found is when people pray it that way, then that whole thing disappears.
Yeah. I do, like when we pray the rosary here some days, if you came in and you were not Catholic or you weren't familiar with this tradition or this way of praying, it might sound kind of monotonous to you though. Like, because people are really praying. They're not, it's not a show that people are putting on. So it is a kind of, I don't know. It's so kind of meditative and peaceful that I'm not sure how it would seem to somebody from the outside if they came in and heard us praying.
Yeah, I know some people have a hard time with it, and other people are just drawn right to it, and they think, oh, that's so amazing. So everybody's different.
Again, the number is 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Keith Nestor is our guest. He's been doing wonderful things on the internet. He's got the book. Well, you got 2 books now, actually. The Convert's Guide to Roman Catholicism is the one I've been mentioning because it's about your first year in the church. And if this is your first year in the church and you want to share your experience, or if you're thinking about coming into the church and you want to talk with Keith, now is the time to do it. But the other book is Unpacking the Mysteries of the Rosary, connecting the spiritual fruits to your daily life. And then are you going to keep writing books? Is that it now? Who
knows? I don't know.
I spirit to move you?
Yeah, I need the Spirit to move me. I'm not on a schedule. But the Rosary book just grew out of the Rosary Crew because I share these meditations before we pray. So when we get ready to pray the Rosary in our channel, I'll share a short meditation before each mystery to help people get in that right headspace where they can go, okay, I'm entering into the Garden of Gethsemane with Jesus during the Sorrowful Mysteries, or I'm entering into the Annunciation and the Joyful Mystery. So that way we're really present with God in those mysteries. They're impacting our lives. We're not just rattling things off randomly.
Yeah. Let's go to Albert. I don't have a location for Albert, but we're glad you're here, Albert. Go ahead with your question for Keith Nestor.
Yes, I've got 2 questions. One, I was raised Catholic, and then I got married, and all of a sudden I went to another denomination for a little bit. I never got nothing out of it. To me, it was more of a show than anything else. It was just the music, the lights, and the smoke, and everything. I wasn't getting nothing out of it, so I finally told my wife, we're going back to Catholic Church, I'm not going at all. So we came back home. So then my 2 boys now, they've graduated out of high school and college. Now they've gone to other denominations. One doesn't go to church at all anymore, so I was wanting to know exactly where can I get that book you're talking about, Why I'm a Catholic.
Oh.
And 2,
okay.
2, I have a sister that argues with me all the time about that I'm doing wrong by praying to the Virgin Mary and to the saints and stuff like that. And I try to argue with her, and she's always telling me, Google it, Google it. So I told her one day, I said, if you like to Google so much, Google who started your church and Google who started the Catholic Church. I think she's done it before because she wouldn't do it. So I don't know exactly how to come to her because everything turns into an argument with her.
Okay. Keith?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the problems is she's equating prayer with worship, and we're only supposed to worship God. So when she says, oh, you pray to the saints, you pray to Mary, a lot of times Protestants don't have a category for intercessory prayer to the saints. So it just sounds weird. So what you have to explain to them is 2 important things. The first important thing is that the saints are not unaware of us. They're with God, and the book of Hebrews tells us that we are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses. So the saints are with God. They're not dead. Remember, Jesus said that God is the God of the living, not the God of the dead. So they're alive with God. And we're also called as Christians to pray for one another. So we ask for their intercession. We ask them to pray for us because they're closer to God. They're with God in heaven if they are saints indeed. So that's what she needs to understand. It's not worship. It's not ascribing divinity to them. It's just recognizing the reality of where they are in relation to God and asking for them to pray for you.
And Albert, that book, Why We're Catholic, it's on sale right now at shop.catholic.com. But I'll just send you a free copy of it. Just if you give us your address, we'll send you a copy of Why We're Catholic, and you can share what you find there with your sons. And I hope that's helpful. And I also hope you'll call back again. We're happy to talk with you anytime, and maybe a little follow up as questions come up from your sons. If that happens, you're very welcome here. 888-318-7884 is the number. Savannah in Louisiana is next. Savannah, glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Keith Nestor.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, I just wanted to ask, I grew up Southern Baptist, and I recently became Catholic about a year ago.
Welcome
home. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I will say one of the things that I've struggled with is just angst toward, I just have a hard time. I guess there's a little bit of anger. I guess a feeling of being duped by the way I was taught, and now understanding the fullness of the church as I do now. So straddling that sense of anger, but then also straddling the other fence of, obviously, I never want to come off as arrogant to anybody who would consider being Catholic. So other than praying the rosary, I just wanted to see if there was any comment on that.
Yeah, well, you're not alone in that. I can tell you, I know plenty of people who have felt that same way, and you just have to let that go as far as the whole thing of being duped. But if you have that sense inside of you, use that as a motivation to learn all you can. And if you feel like, okay, I got to do this to make up for lost time, throw yourself into it all the more. Now, as far as not wanting to come across as arrogant, I think here's the thing I would tell you. Don't use social media too much with regard to broadcasting things about your faith, because it tends to be the way that people communicate things now, and it's easy for people to misinterpret that. So I would just really limit the social media stuff when it comes to that. Now, if you are going to do that, just be aware that you don't want to, post things like, oh, I'm so glad I'm not one of those miserable Protestants that don't have the full Bible anymore. I mean, use wisdom with that. But really just your humility, the closer you draw to Jesus in your new experience as a new Catholic, the more humble you're going to become. And you won't have to try. It's just going to happen. So just be aware of how things you say might be interpreted by people. But at the same time, don't be ashamed. Be bold. Be excited. You don't have to hide your joy for being Catholic. And that's not going to turn into pride or arrogance. It's just going to come off as joy.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that encouragement.
Savannah, would you stay on for a second? Because I want to ask you and Keith both something that I don't understand that you both seem to share. When you say being duped, do you mean that you didn't get good teaching in the RCIA, or that people taught you the wrong thing? What exactly are the two of you talking about when you say that? You both seem to share the experience. I want to know what it is.
So I would say for my situation, it just, I think that, I want to make sure that I speak from personal experience as opposed to the broad stroke.
Okay.
I will say, for me, I think there's a lot of pompous in my experience at church. There's a lot of emphasis on what you look like and what you're doing, and are you expressing outward signs of how religious you are?
Oh, yes.
And so there's a lot of, I think when I say I feel duped, it's that there's so many actions that that I can tell you're a believer, because it's, there's a lot of lingo with it. There's a lot of, we know they're not doing the right thing because they're not acting this way. So,
I think I understand. Yeah.
I don't know. Now that I'm Catholic, I feel, boy, wasn't that a little bit of a waste? But I also acknowledge that, thank God for the way I was brought up, because I know that I was more receptive to being Catholic because I was raised Protestant.
I think I
So
understand.
it's not all for loss, but
Yes,
yeah.
I see what you're saying. That's what you already knew what she was talking about.
I understand exactly where she's coming from. For me, it was more about this realization of all of the people that proclaim to teach theology, and they're so sure that what they're saying is right, but yet they disagree with so many other Protestants, and but they come across like they know the truth because they've got the Bible and the Holy Spirit, and they don't for 1 second think that maybe they don't see the whole picture.
I gotcha. Hey, Savannah, thank you for the call. Would you like a copy of Jimmy Akin's book, The Words of Eternal Life, True Happiness, and Where to Find It? Well, I'll tell you what, you don't have to say on the air if you'd like it. That's rude to put you on the spot like that. If you want it, just say on the line and we'll send it to you. Savannah, thank you very much for the call. I'm going to go to Houston, Texas. Laura is in Houston, Texas. Laura, we're getting near the top of the hour, so if you could be kind of quick with your question, that'll give Keith more time to give you an answer.
Okay, sorry, I kind of have a nebulous question. I'm just on this journey into the Catholic faith, and I think I need to read more about the history to make sure I'm getting it right, because, you read a Protestant source, and it's like, no, there's all these councils that decided about the Bible, and it's done with, and then the Catholic Answer says something that's similar but with a different perspective, and I used to be so convinced of the Catholic side, and now I'm just questioning everything, and I don't want to be. I want to just go home. I want to just be home.
Sure. Yeah, but you want to make sure that you're being faithful to the truth.
Using the mind God gave me.
Praise
and not
God.
just being
Praise God, Laura. Yep. Keith?
So, Laura, I would tell you this. It sounds like you've looked into a lot of things with apologetics and reading things. There comes a point in everyone's journey when it stops becoming just about your intellect and your mind, and it goes to your heart. And you just get to a point where you just know, I can't understand it, I can't explain it, but God is drawing me into the church. And
yes, and that's how I felt at the beginning, for sure.
Yes, but then you're starting to outsmart yourself because you're like, well, I have to double check and do all this reading and figure all this stuff out. And I think that there's a time and a place for that, but there's also a time and a place just to be wooed by Jesus into his church and to just go with that. And let him pull you in. For me, that happened around the Blessed Virgin Mary. I started really being pulled in by her, and it was a powerful experience. I don't know where you are and all that, but I would tell you this: you're never going to get to a point when you can adequately go, okay, I have an answer for every little thing. There's always going to be someone who can say something else. You just have to get to a point where you recognize that God's calling you into his church, and when you take that step of faith, it's like all of that doubt then drops away. But it's a leap that you have to take.
Yes. Yeah.
Or as Dottie, who's in the studio with us talking about her conversion, said, there's a time when you have to surrender.
Yeah.
She used the word surrender.
Yeah. And we all get there. And you hear that in people's stories when they kind of get to that point, they go, okay, I'm going to stop fighting against it, and I'm just going to go with it. Remember the name Israel means wrestles with God. And God wants to wrestle with you, but not against you. And if you go with the flow of what he's doing in your life, drawing you into this, the power of the Holy Spirit is going to fill in those gaps, Laura. It's going to fill in those gaps. He will guide you into that. And you won't be able to necessarily make sense of everything. That's okay. You don't have to. That's the beautiful thing about being Catholic, is that you don't have to make sense of everything. It's been done for you. So just receive it.
Yeah, I do want to rest in the authority of the Catholic Church and stop trying to figure out everything for myself. I just can't.
You're gonna listen, Laura. You're gonna do it, and you're gonna love it. I promise. It's gonna be amazing.
But you got a sharp brain, and you're very cautious and careful. Those are good qualities. Those aren't bad qualities. So I'd like it if you'd call again, Laura. If you'd like a copy of Jimmy's book, The Words of Eternal Life, True Happiness, and Where to Find It, we'll send it to you, but you don't have to take it. But I'm quite sincere, Laura. I hope as objections come up, or as you continue your wrestling, if you call back, that'd be great. I hope everybody will check out Keith Nestor online. Very much worthwhile. Joyful, committed, loving Catholic. Keith, thank you very much for a wonderful hour.
Thank you for having me, Si. God bless.
It was fun to talk about things we don't get to usually talk about. Tim Staples next on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. As promised, Tim Staples here with us this hour. I have to say, Keith Nestor, one of those people you get to spend an afternoon with him and you go exactly the same on the air as he is off the air. And that's very, very refreshing. What a nice time we had with him this afternoon. I feel kind of inspired by his joy and his fervor for the Catholic faith. If you got a question about the Catholic faith, whether you're Catholic or not, whether you're inspiring and full of fervor, or you never set foot in the Catholic Church, whatever it is, if you've got a question about the Catholic faith, you are welcome to call 888-318-7884. There's 2 lines open right now, 888-318-7884. Tim Staples, of course, senior apologist here at Catholic Answers and the author of Behold Your Mother, a biblical and historical defense of the Marian doctrines. Hello, Tim Staples.
Hello, Cy Kellett.
Are you recovered?
I am recovered.
You and Jen are so much tougher than I am. Like you got back here and then you traveled somewhere else.
Oh, that was brutal, though.
Oh, that
man.
was?
Oh, that was brutal because I wasn't.
You weren't 100%.
I wasn't. And so, I get to the hotel and I can't sleep. And then when I gave my talk the next day, I'm not sure what I said. But, yeah, I seem to be back now.
Well, I have to say, I didn't go to the Catholic Radio Conference in Alabama, EWTN's, and I love going to that conference. But I just thought, I can't do it. I can't get on another plane after coming back from Australia. And I think I made the right decision because I didn't, even as it was, I didn't handle it very well.
Yeah. But what a great trip. And in fact, getting out again, and I'm getting ready to head out for another trip to Tucson and whatnot. It's just so beautiful. It's wonderful seeing the wonderful folks in Australia and, just going out again. It's such a blessing to do what we do.
It is. That's
to
the
be
truth.
able to meet and share the faith with some of the most wonderful people on the planet.
Yeah.
Come on.
I know. 888-318-7884, the number. I'm about to go to phones, but I want to ask you a question, but I don't know if I'm supposed to ask it on the air. So just tell me, am I supposed to ask you about your pilgrimage on the air, or am I supposed to not talk about that?
You can.
Okay.
All we know right now is that our pilgrimage is gone.
Oh.
Yeah, it's due to the war. Oh, it's just devastating because we were so excited. My wife was so excited, but we're working out details right now as to how we move forward because folks have already put, money up and everything. And are we going to move it back? Are we going to try to do something else?
So it's still in the deciding phase.
Yeah, it's in the deciding phase. So those of you who are going with us, hang in there because we're working on some stuff, and maybe we'll be able to do another trip or the same trip later. It's just now it's so hard, Cy, because the war seems to be escalating.
Yeah, like when would you go? Who even knows?
Yeah, that's so. Again, hang in there because we'll see what we can do.
The number here again, 888-318-7884. We're starting with Aaron, and Aaron, we're awful glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Tim.
Thank you. Hi, Cy. Hi, Tim. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes.
I am a Protestant. I have a question about a particular question about prayer in the Catholic Church. It was for Keith, a former Protestant. Now it's for Tim, a former Protestant. Protestants, we talk about prayer requests. Most of what I hear in the Catholic Church is prayer intentions. And I don't know, so I guess two-part question. Is there a difference in meaning? And if so, is there a difference in practice? Help me understand this.
Right. Yeah, I would say that they're synonyms. Request and intention really doesn't have a difference. So it's what do we say? A distinction without a difference.
Without a difference, yeah.
A distinction without a difference. I guess intention is important in Catholicism because, of course, that gets to the heart of the matter because your intention comes from your heart. But, as a Protestant, I would say the same with regard to request.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Aaron, thank you
brother.
for getting us started. Let's go to Houston, Texas now. Jeff is in Houston, Texas. Go ahead, Jeff, with your question for Tim.
Yeah. Hey, Tim. Hey, as one former Pentecostal to another,
yes,
I'm curious to know how, if at all, you handle speaking in tongues in your own devotion.
Sure. Great question, Jeff. And for me personally, first of all, I would state that the Catholic Church teaches in the Catechism, for example, section 2003, that tongues is a valid gift. It's not something that has disappeared, even though there are some early fathers of the church even that taught that it's not a gift for today. In fact, the church teaches that it is, again, in section 2003. I know there may be a couple more sections, but that's just one section, section 2003 in the Catechism. But as far as defining the nature of the gift, the church simply has not. You don't have magisterial teaching on this. So this is an area where Catholics can genuinely disagree as far as the nature of the gift of tongues. What does it mean? Now, to get to your question about me personally, I do not believe that I used to, quote unquote, speak in tongues when I was an Assembly of God boy. Have I ever told you that, Cy Kellett?
I don't recall that. I can't remember.
Well, I am confessing now before all the world. No, I did, but upon further reflection, Jeff, especially after I became Catholic, I do not believe that I have the true gift of tongues, though I believe it's a possibility. In fact, Father Hugh Barber, who you may have heard, oh boy, I wish we still had him around the office, Cy Kellett.
I know.
That man is beyond brilliant. He has taught me so many things over the years. It's just amazing. But, he mentioned to me when we were talking about this, a priest that he knew of from years back. We're talking in the 1930s, 40s, so this was before Father Hugh was born, but that he knew of. How that he was a missionary in Africa back when African countries were first being evangelized and whatnot. So that may have been early 1900s, that sort of thing, Cy. And encountered a tribe, now catch this, Jeff, who, nobody knew their language. They didn't have a written language. And this priest was given the gift of tongues. He simply understood them.
Whoa.
Father Hugh said he understood them and helped them to create a written language after evangelizing them. I mean, brother, that's the gift of tongues.
Yeah, that really is. And that's an evangelical gift, too. It's not just like for the person receiving it. It's for the good of the gospel.
That's right. That is phenomenal. That's a charismatic gift, right?
Yeah.
For the other. So now, again, I'm not calling into question, other people's claim to have this gift. I'm just saying I don't believe mine was. I believe what happened with me, and this is, we have to issue caveats, as Pope Paul VI did, by the way, in 1968 in his famous letter to the Charismatics, where he encourages the Charismatic movement, but he also, issues some caveats that we have to be careful because sometimes these manifestations can be the result of what I call a spiritual manipulation. People, in my case, Cy, you got to picture this. I'm in a Pentecostal prayer meeting and people are going to town. And Jeff, you probably know what I'm talking about. Just bless Jesus, lift your hands and praise the Lord. And then I remember folks saying, it'll be like little words or syllables that come to your mind. You just speak it out, brother. Just speak it out. That's it, brother. And so I'm going, okay, and I'm praying, and then it's handarabakai. Yeah, you got it, And see, that to me is spiritual manipulation. If you're going to be given a gift by God, it's not going to be because you get pumped up emotionally and all of that.
Right.
Gifts of the Spirit are communicated, like, for example, through the sacraments of baptism and then increased in confirmation. It has nothing to do with emotion whatsoever. You receive the gift, period, and then you're called to stir up the gifts. And so, Jeff, what I say is I believe that the charismatic movement has been tremendously fruitful and in many ways in the Catholic Church, and still is, because of its emphasis on the spiritual gifts and stirring up the gifts in a true way being open to God and supernatural manifestations. And I believe that's why we've seen some real supernatural manifestations. The only thing I'm saying, Jeff, is in my own experience, I don't believe I have that gift, even though I exercised a quote-unquote gift for many, many years when I was Pentecostal. But hey, you know, we should be open to gifts of the Spirit and moving in those gifts of discernment of spirit, wisdom, knowledge. Also, I mean, God gives us these gifts, supernatural wisdom, knowledge, for example, of situations. You can be in a situation where your kid is in crisis and you pray and be open to a word of wisdom. Wisdom meaning to know which way to turn, or knowledge. You know, a gift of knowledge that will illuminate your mind and empower you to be able to respond to situations. Man, that's for real. That's I think, some of the positives that St. Paul VI was talking about in his letter to Charismatics. But, you know, at the same time, just issue the caveats. You know, don't get too carried away with emotion. And then, because what can happen is like what St. Paul warns about in 1 Corinthians 14. He says people are going to come in and think you're crazy. You know, if all is not done decently and in order, as St. Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 14. Remember, the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. If you're all out of control and such, guess what? That's out of order. Right? And I always point out, man, 1 Corinthians 14, 37 and 38, where St. Paul says, if any man thinks himself spiritual or a prophet, let him know that the things we are teaching are from the Lord. And if anyone doesn't recognize this, he is not to be recognized, right? So notice, no matter how spiritual and how many spiritual gifts, I'm thinking of men like Montanus in the 2nd century, moved in the gifts of the Spirit, quote unquote, got out of hand, ended up getting excommunicated and taking a lot of people with him. So, you know, decently and in order, in subjection to the apostolic authority, that is, Paul there is saying, I'm an apostle, submit to me. But that means also the bishops who are the successors of the apostles. And then you have the real gifts of the Spirit moving. Does that make sense, Jeff?
Yeah, very much. I would agree with everything you said. It's also the reason that I left the ultra Pentecostal, group that I was with, and I pretty much come to the same conclusion as you, with the exception that, unlike you, I still do speak in tongues.
God bless you.
But and I'm not saying that to
sure,
to kind of say, hey, but look at me. But you've given me some good thoughts, about I like what you had to say, and it's going to give me pause to think about about that. Because I agree with you. It's very it needs to be discerned.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Jeff. A fascinating conversation.
Great,
thanks very much.
Great call. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate Jeff's spirit, too.
I know. Jeff, thank you very, very much for the call. Well, we got to go to a break. We'll take a quick break. Be right back with more Open Forum with Tim Staples on Catholic Answers Live.
Your questions, Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
EWTN's Religious Catalog has terrific suggestions for Christmas gifts. The Prayer Book for Tired Parents, Practical Ways to Grow in Love of God and Get Your Family to Heaven by David and Debbie Cowden will help you develop a home brimming with love, peace, and faith that will help your family become the saints God made you to be. The Prayer Book for Tired Parents is one of many great Christmas gifts from EWTN Religious Catalog. For more, visit EWTNRC.com today.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It's Open Forum. That means you can call with any question you've got on the Catholic faith, whoever you are, whatever your faith is, whatever your background is. Wherever you are right now, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. If you're outside the U.S., just dial 0 and a 1 before that. Maybe it'll get to us. We never know. Some people tell. It's a weird thing if people call internationally. Yeah, I can never get through, and other people try it one time and they get through. So let's go to Aaron in Warren, Michigan, watching on Twitch. Aaron, go ahead with your question for Tim.
Yes, I'm wondering, the angels of the Lord appeared in Joseph in a dream. What I'm wondering is, do the demons have the same capabilities, or are they limited and they can't do the same thing like that?
Another great question. And the answer is yes. Demons do have access to our imaginations. But remember this about demons, and the same is true of angels as well. They cannot do anything that God doesn't give them permission to do. That's something, Cy, I think is so important for people to remember. You know, you look at Job chapter 1, the famous case of Job. I love that, how the angels and the fallen angels are ascending up before the throne of God. And of course, the angels are depicted in Job. And by the way, that comes right over into the New Testament as kind of advocates for us, almost like attorneys. Yeah. Right? They are advocates for us, whereas the demons and Lucifer himself are, condemning. They're as Revelation chapter 12 says it, the constant accuser of the brethren, right? Lucifer, they're saying, what about him, and what about him, and look at him, and I got him to sin, and right. But what's amazing there is, I'm sure you know the story, brother, the devil wasn't even thinking about Job. But God says, have you considered my servant Job? I always say at this point, that's right. Gee, thanks, God. And that leads to the test of tests for Job. But remember, so the devil himself or the fallen angels, they have no power whatsoever to do anything unless God gives the permission. Number one, but having and again, the angels as well. Angels are not just automatons. They are sent, in fact, as Matthew chapter 18, verse 10 says, they do always behold the face of the Lord. That is, the angels have the beatific vision. And so they, like Christ in his human nature, in John 5:19, remember, Jesus says, I can do nothing on that is, the Son of Man can do nothing on his own, but only that which he sees the Father doing, right? He is always in obedience to what the Father is doing, what he sees. Why? Because he has the beatific vision. Well, the angels are the same. And so the angels, they don't make mistakes, Si. They don't, accidentally. Oops. I'm sorry. I got the wrong guy, Si. Where's my guy? That's not the angels, okay? But now, having said that, to get to your question, but that is an important sort of backdrop, is the angels, as well as fallen angels, do have access to our imaginations. They cannot coerce the will. And so in that sense, they don't have access to our intellects and wills. They cannot move directly our intellects or our wills. But they do have access to our imaginations, and that is the realm of dreams. Because with dreams, what are you doing? Normally you're recalling the memories and such in the imagination, and that's why you get all kinds of crazy stuff in there, because it's stuff they do have, and that's why we need to pray as, I want to say, yes, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13 and 14, St. Paul talks about casting down imaginations, right? And every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, and wrestling into obedience, every thought to the obedience of Christ. So in the spiritual battle, we have to remember this, right? And we have to pray. That's why we pray before we go to bed. It's very important that we do. Keep me through the night. We have prayers for that. That God's holy angels, I pray that over my kids, protect them during the night and so forth. We lose sight of that a lot, Si, that there's a real spiritual battle going on. Right. And the devil does want to get into our imaginations, because that's where he can tempt us to sin. But does that make sense, Aaron?
Yes, yeah, that's good.
All right, brother.
All
Thanks
right,
so much
Aaron.
for your call. You know what? I have to say, every once in a while, I like to say to folks in general, you know, with Aaron and the other callers, Jeff, and I forgot the other fellow, it's so important you guys ask these questions because you know what? There's a lot of people out there that have the same question. And we appreciate those of you because I know it's not easy to call in and ask a question. You know, you're like a little nervous about doing it.
Yeah.
But thank you all for calling in because each one of these questions, I believe, are not just for you, but they're for a lot of other people too.
888-318-7884 is the number. I was thinking that it's very interesting what you said about the demon needing God's permission. In a certain sense, that can give you a sense of confidence, really, because I've heard about these saints where like they see the devil and they just like they don't even acknowledge him. They just ignore it. And they must just have confidence in God that, well, God's allowing this for some reason.
You know, remember in Mel Gibson's movie, The Passion of the Christ, where Jesus is on the Via Dolorosa and suffering terribly, and then the devil appears, and Mary is looking at Jesus, and the devil appears on the other side. Remember that scene?
Yeah.
And then the devil looks at Mary, and I tell you, there's so much in that movie that's brilliant. But Mary looks right at the devil, and you get that sense of Genesis 3:15, right? Enmity between thee and the woman, thy seed and her seed. But she only looks at him just for a few seconds and then right back to Jesus.
Yeah.
She did exactly what you're talking about. It's
Right,
like dismissive. You know what? You're just a creature.
Yeah.
I'm looking at God.
Right, yeah. Bernadette in Sacramento watching on YouTube. You're next, Bernadette. Go ahead with your question for Tim.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my question.
Yes.
So a couple weeks ago during a Q&A with the priest, the topic of the Eucharist came up.
Yes.
And in a response he gave, he said something like, he asked, where is Jesus? And we said, in heaven. He said, yeah, so his body is in heaven, so his body is not in the Eucharist. I don't want to misquote him too much, but he basically said if that were the case, it would be cannibalism. And that kind of threw me off because I had always been under the impression that it was his physical body, not just metaphysically. He kind of elaborated on it. It was a bit hard to understand just because I was raised just believing that was a given. You know, his real presence means his real, physical, true body and everything that goes with that, including his, essence of God and on that kind of a thing. So is it just a physical, is it just a metaphysical presence of God, or is it both metaphysical, physical, the whole thing?
Gotcha. Okay, here's the key, and I could not even think to respond to whatever the priest says because a lot of times, we don't remember exactly what the priest has said, or so. Believe me, I've done that many times. I listen to a broadcast and I think I hear somebody say something, I go nuts. And actually, they didn't say what I thought they said, right? I think those words didn't mean what you think they mean. It's that sort of thing. But here, what we want to be clear on is what is the teaching of the church. And here's the key. And I'll give you a little homework. I'm just going to give you one paragraph from one of my favorite documents that the church has produced. It's so beautiful. Mysterium Fidei of section 46 there. So what we have to understand is that when the priest declares the words of institution, this is my body, this is the chalice of my blood, there is no longer bread present, there is no longer wine present in that chalice. What is present, or I should say who is present in each of those two species, is Jesus Christ, wholly, entirely present, body, blood, soul, and divinity, and as Pope St. Paul VI says, present whole and entire in his physical reality, corporeally present, although not in the manner in which bodies are in a place. Close quote. All right, now let's flesh this out a little bit. So the first point is, yes, in his entire physical reality, he is present. And that means hair, nails, bones, everything. All right? However, and body, blood, soul, and divinity of the Lord. But remember, we're not talking about his what in philosophy we call his accidental mode of being, right? Like Cy Kellett and I are sitting here in our accidental mode of being. Jesus is not present that way. I'll tell you what we're going to do. The music is starting right now. But when we come back, I want to put a bow on this and help explain what does that mean? His substantial presence versus his accidental mode of being. We'll talk about that after the break.
Another one of these great questions, Bernadette. Hang on. We'll get right back to it. Tim Staples on Catholic Answers Live. Are you scared to talk about abortion? Don't worry. Almost everyone is. You can overcome this fear as Trent Horn shows in the newly revised and expanded second edition of Persuasive Pro-Life. With a little knowledge and a few proven techniques, you can become a bold and effective apologist for life. Visit shop.catholic.com to order your copy of Persuasive Pro-Life and never again be afraid to speak up. Also available at good Catholic bookstores.
When the resurrected Jesus appeared to disciples on the road to Emmaus, they didn't recognize him until the breaking of the bread. The same is true today. In the Holy Eucharist, we really meet Jesus. In The Eucharist is Really Jesus, author Joe Heschmeyer explains how knowing Jesus in the Eucharist is the key to understanding all of Christian faith. Order your copy of The Eucharist is Really Jesus today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Is relativism dead? It sure seems dead. Each day, new moral demands are made and they are presented to us as absolutes. Everything, from transgender ideology to physician-assisted suicide, is presented as a moral good that all right-thinking people must accept. But Catholic Answers' own Carlo Broussard says look deeper, and you will see today's moralism is just relativism dressed up in new clothes. Carlo's eye-opening book, The New Relativism, shines a light on how the sacred moral teachings of this age cover up a deep denial of moral truth. Order your copy of The New Relativism today at shop.catholic.com and be prepared to defend the truth against aggressive relativism. The New Relativism at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It's open forum. Tim Staples is our guest, and it's always nice when the apologists get a nice, easy question like this one from Bernadette.
Yes.
Bernadette basically wants to know, in what sense is Christ physically present in the Eucharist?
Right. And so, most importantly, we wanted to emphasize that, yes, Jesus is present in his entire physical reality, as well as being present, body, blood, soul, and divinity, which are obviously spirit realities because the soul is not corporeal, and of course, his divinity is not corporeal. So when Paul VI emphasizes in his physical reality, that includes body, blood, and that whole physical reality. Okay, but here's where Pope St. Paul VI says, though, although when we talk about him being present in his physical reality, it's not in the manner in which bodies are in a place. And why is that? Because when we talk about being present in a particular locality, we're talking about accidentals, right? And here's where we have to try, this is a mystery, Cy Kellett, right? Mm-hmm. But try to understand the difference between substance and accidents. Because when we talk about substantial presence, we're talking about the thing, whatever we're talking about, its substantial presence is the whole thing. This is the core of what the thing is we're talking about, whether it's bread or the body, blood, soul, and divinity of the Lord. However, substance speaks minus the accidents. The accidental, the appearances are not included when we're talking about a substantial presence. Now, what are the accidents? Well, the accidents include quality, quantity, and locality, right? Now, why do we say that? Because think about it, quantity. I think I've said this to you before, Si. In the last few years, I have grown in quantity, sideways.
But you also shrunk a little bit.
I have lately.
Yeah.
Yeah. The byproduct of the stroke, I had to change my diet. So I have lost a little bit lately. But over the years, let's just say I've grown outwardly. All right. Now, when you increase your quantity as a being, you don't become another being. Right, because you
right, yeah.
Even though Si's wife may think he looks like a different being.
Well, I
now.
do. I look like a different being than the one she married. I can tell you that.
That's right. But that's what we're talking about. And quality, of course. The older I get, the more my quality decreases. My brain, everything else, seems to be falling apart. But also locality. See, my quality of being doesn't change my substantial being. And my locality, me walking from here to over there, doesn't change my substantial being. And so when we talk about then substantial presence, we have to try to imagine in our minds, because again, this is mysterious. There's a mysteriousness about it. And when we're talking about the mystery of the human being or substantial being or being in general, transcends our ability to fully comprehend. I mean, Si, think of it. I don't know why a brown cow eats green grass and produces white milk. I don't know. I mean, science can break it down to the nano level, but in the end, all we're doing is putting labels on stuff that we don't ultimately understand. What is a quark? I don't know, and neither does any scientist in the world. Nobody really knows. Okay, and so this is what we're talking about. When we say substantial presence, it's absent quantity, quality, and locality. That's why Jesus can be present in 1 million different tabernacles at once, right? Because locality is not a part of the substantial reality. This is why, by the way, Padre Pio could bilocate and such. You have to be talking about a substantial presence somewhere else. Because if you include the appearances or the accidentals, Jesus can only be seated at the right hand of the Father, whatever that means. He can only be in one location in his accidental mode of being, in his human nature. But substantially, yes, he is multiplied all over the world. But here's the point, though. You don't want to fall to the error that says, and believe me, I've heard others make this mistake. I'm not saying the priest did that was on the air because I don't know what he said, but I have heard folks make the mistake of saying his presence in the Eucharist is not physical. It's spiritual. Or they'll say it's metaphysical. Well, of course, there's a metaphysical reality to everything. But his presence in the Eucharist includes his physical reality, but not in accordance with the accidental mode of being. And that's why Paul VI says that he's present. And I'm actually quoting from the document right now. I gave you the homework of reading Mysterium Fidei, section 46. But he says, nothing remains of the bread. He's talking about after the consecration, he says, nothing remains of the bread and wine except for the species beneath which Christ is present whole and entire in his physical reality, corporeally present, although not in the manner which bodies are in a place. Because when he's talking about the species of bread and wine, he's talking about the accidents or the appearances. I hope that helps.
Bernadette, did it help? Is it clear?
It did help. I did read up a bit on what you were saying about the accidental and the substance, so I kind of had an idea of what you're talking about.
Good.
It's still a bit more complex than.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy, Bernadette.
Yeah,
That's
it's
right.
a little bit of a brain twister, but
yeah, just
it is for sure.
You know what though? Here, just remember, if you're struggling with the idea of substance and accidents and whatnot, I love the clear words of Saint Cyril of Jerusalem, who said way back in the 4th century, when Jesus speaks his word, this is my body, nature must give way to the word of God. And nature becomes what Jesus says it is. And I love that Because on a simple level, and this is something beautiful about all Catholic theology, on a simple level, a child can understand it. My kids understand. My 8-year-old, he's now 9, he's getting old. Anthony, if you're listening, I'm talking about you. Anthony understands that when the priest says, "This is my body," that's what it is. Even though it looks like bread, guess what? It's Jesus' body, because Jesus says through the priest. So if we can keep that, we can understand. If you want to dive deeper and understand, then dive in deeper and take a look at substance and accidents, but always maintain the simplicity of the faith. And from there, you can dive deeper. Like the Trinity. We believe one God, 3 persons, all right? But we could spend our whole lives diving into that great mystery, understanding it deeper and deeper. I hope that helps as well.
Thanks, Bernadette. I'm going to keep moving because there's lots of folks on the line. Jerry's in Texas. Jerry, go ahead with your question for Tim.
Hi, Tim. This is Jerry. I'm a team member of an RCIA group here in Dallas area. During one of our conversations, we were talking about the impact of Adam's sin on the human nature.
Right.
Now, we know the created nature had preternatural gifts of original holiness and justice.
Right.
Okay. And then after that, it was damaged. Concupiscence enters the picture and whatnot.
Correct.
So my question really revolves around Mary's Immaculate Conception. So the way I look at it, now I don't know if there's if the damaged nature is just and we receive that original sin through propagation because we inherit it through this damaged nature.
Mm-hmm.
My question about Mary is, and I know God preserved her from original sin.
Correct.
But was she bestowed the original human nature with the preternatural gifts?
No.
Or was she given the damaged one, but God just kind of mended it or whatever he needed to do to remove that stain from that?
Right. Yes.
From that nature. So that's my question.
Yeah. Well, you answered it. The latter is correct.
Okay.
And in this instance,
is that a church teaching, or
yes,
or is it more of a theological?
No, this is church teaching, and it's rooted really in the infallible declaration Ineffabilis Deus of Pope St. Pius IX. When he declared the infallibility, he defined what that means, and that is she was by a singular. I'm going on memory here, but in the infallible decree, it says, by a singular privilege of grace, she was preserved free of the stain of original sin in the act of her being conceived. That's what it means. And so there's absolutely nothing about, and she was restored to the preternatural gifts and so forth. And of course, we know, theologically speaking, she was not given the preternatural gifts because she died. Now, I know people will say, well, wait a minute, isn't that still up for grabs in the church? No, it's not. Now, it wasn't part of the infallible declaration. Of course, there are, in fact, if you read my book, Behold Your Mother, I cite for you St. Epiphanius in 350 AD that taught that she never died. Timothy of Jerusalem, another famous homily preached in the 4th century, he also held to that. And there's a very ancient tradition that says she never died. Now, of course, the stronger tradition and more ancient tradition is that she died. And that is the teaching of the church. Though it's never been infallibly proclaimed, in the East, very strongly, the Feast of the Assumption was called the Feast of the Dormition for many, many centuries before it became the Feast of the Assumption. And the Dormition is deeply rooted in among our Eastern Catholic friends. And of course, I point out to folks as well that when Pope Pius XII promulgated the dogma of the Assumption, in Munificentissimus Deus of 1950, 8 times in that declaration, he talks about Mary's death. She died, and when she died, and so forth. And why is that? Because this is it's the teaching of the ordinary magisterium. It's not infallible, but it's a teaching of the ordinary magisterium that she in fact died. Now, of course, if she would have been preserved in the preternatural gifts, then she would not have died, because one of those three gifts is immortality. So I hope that's sufficient. Just understand that the preternatural gifts, integrity and fusion of knowledge, as well as immortality, are going to be far superseded in the gifts that we receive in the end of time, because, of course, the beatific vision, that was not given to Adam and Eve. And the beatific vision makes the gift of mere immortality, infusion, and integrity look like child's play, my friend, because we are going to see God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, comprehend him, not absolutely, because not even the human nature of Jesus can fully comprehend God, but we will comprehend in accordance with the gift of grace we've been given, as well as our cooperation with those graces at the end of our life. And in that, we will comprehend the entire created order, God's entire plan of salvation. I mean, we will have comprehension that will make Adam and Eve look like nothing, So, but we have to understand that God is doing this in stages as well. So we have to be faithful unto death in order to attain the fullness of what we're talking about. But anyway, I went beyond your question, but does that help at all?
It does. It helps a lot. Can I follow up with just a definition?
Fire away.
If I may.
Yeah.
So the dormition, is that just a general term, regardless of whether she died or just fell asleep, or is that tied to one of the traditions?
Yeah, it's tied to the tradition of, yes. Talk to any of our Eastern Catholic brothers, and they will point it out real quickly that, that's tied to the tradition of her falling asleep. And remember, falling asleep means death. That goes all the way back to the Old Testament. Daniel chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Those who are asleep in the dust will rise. That's a prophetic statement concerning the resurrection. The falling asleep is used both Old Testament and New Testament as a sort of a term that is synonymous with dying. And so again, you have this teaching. And by the way, it's not just a matter of East-West either, although the East, we got to give the East credit because they preserve the traditions really, really well in the East. But it's not just in the East, because you have St. Gregory of Tours in 563 who taught on Mary dying, laying in state for 3 days, and the apostles come and see him. And of course, you have St. John Damascene in the 8th century that teaches it as well. So it's both East and West that really had this understanding of Mary dying.
Jerry, we got to leave it there because we got to take a break. We got more open forum coming up right after this with Catholic Answers Live with Tim Staples on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on, Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
In Morse code, the sequence SOS is a distress call. It's been said that it stands for Save Our Souls. Well, right now our world is in big trouble, and we're putting out an SOS call for help. Will you answer that call? St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, has hundreds of teams who share the good news with souls who don't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to get involved.
Hi, this is Mike Aquilina with a few words about St. Irenaeus. It's only recently that Pope Francis has declared him to be a doctor of the Church. And this is unusual because he's been dead for many centuries, almost 2 millennia. But I think he's a man for our time because he's teaching us to think, to have an educated faith, to know the reasons for what we believe, and then present those to a skeptical world.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. This hour is zipping by, I think because the questions have been really interesting. We've had a lot of really good questions for Tim Staples, our guest. It's open forum. And off to South Korea we go, where our friend Luke calls from time to time from Seoul, South Korea. Hello again, Luke.
Uh-oh. Do we get Luke?
Is there a problem?
Did you hit the right button?
I hit the right button. All right. That's somewhere over the Pacific. That call is not connecting. Luke, hang on, though. I'm not going to give up on you. I'll go to Pennsylvania, which is easier to get to, and then we'll come back to you in Korea after this. Kyle in Pennsylvania listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Go ahead with your question, Kyle.
Hi, Tim and Cy.
Hi, Kyle.
My question is, how can I explain to a Protestant that in John 19, verses 26 to 27, when Jesus says, "Behold your mother," that he's, in a sense, inviting us to take Mary as our mother, and it's not just him giving to John for his mother, and why that's important?
Oh, boy. Yeah, this is a really good question. And, Kyle, I'd like to send you out a gift.
Oh, behold your
Can
mother.
we do that? Yeah. In fact, Kyle, in my book, Behold Your Mother, I have a whole section on this. I think you'll really appreciate. So if you don't mind, we'd love to send you out a free copy. Would that be okay?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, and you just give your address to the call screener, and we'll shoot it out to you. But let me just give you a snippet here of what you're going to get a lot more in the book. But in John 19, I think the key in helping, and this is coming from a Protestant who came to see this while I was still Protestant. I was not Catholic yet. Late in the game in my conversion process. And that is after, of course, the famous statement, woman, behold your son, and woman, behold, or son, behold your mother. The key is the next verse. I believe it's verse 20. What's really cool in this text, and I got this from Pope St. John Paul the Great. Have you heard of him? He's a pretty sharp guy.
Yes, I have heard mention.
And I talked about this as well with my old Greek professor when I was in the seminary. We had a great time going through this. But Pope John Paul points out in his encyclical, Mother of the Redeemer, which I highly recommend, of March 25th, 1987, a brilliant encyclical letter and one of his more apologetic, just absolutely beautiful. But he points out that actually in the Greek text, it's plural. So when it says, and John took Mary as his own, it actually reads eis ta idia, not eis ta idion, which would be singular. It's eis ta idia, which is plural, which seems out of place. Why wouldn't he put it in the singular? Well, he's got something in mind here. Because this is not... Now, John Paul brings out that there seems to be a reciprocating relationship as their own, meaning John and the Blessed Mother belonging to each other. But on a deeper level, you also have included all of us. Because John takes Mary as their own, meaning in the place of all of us. Plural. You want to point that out to your Protestant friend, have him check it out in even if he doesn't know Greek, just go to a Strong's Concordance. You know, they love that, or Young's Concordance, whatever, and you'll see it's plural. But here is the kicker for me. Not only do you see this plural here that's bringing in that, hey, there's more to this than just John, but you also have Revelation chapter 12, the same Apostle John. And that's why I say, people, please don't tell me it's John the Elder who wrote the book of Revelation, although most don't say that. Most say that about the letters of John, but please don't, because John wrote the book of Revelation, man. It's got his fingerprints all over it, and this is one of many examples of John the Apostle. Because notice in Revelation chapter 12, John has the woman who no doubt, and what does Jesus call Mary in John's gospel? John 2:5, John 19:26, right? Woman, both at the wedding feast of Cana and that same text from John 19, as we just mentioned, verses 26 through 28, she's called the woman. Well, in Revelation 12, she's called woman 8 times, connecting these. But the woman, you'll notice, gives birth to the Messiah, Jesus, in verses 4 and 5, but then she gives birth to all of us in Revelation 12, verse 17, and she continued to give birth to all those who have the testimony of Jesus Christ and keep his commandments. This is John. But guess what? He refers to them as her seed, which again ties in Genesis 3:15. We are the seed of the Blessed Virgin Mary in that unique relationship between the woman and her seed. So we are all her seed, the seed of the woman. And here we are in Revelation chapter 19. John is declaring we're all her seed because we are all the children of Mary and not just the Apostle John. So connect Revelation 12:17, where it clearly says the same woman, gune in Greek, that is the mother of Jesus and the mother of John in Revelation 12, and again, that plural indicates all of us, is explicitly revealed to be the mother of us all in Revelation 12:17. Does that make sense, brother?
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Oh, it's a mind blower, brother, and especially if you're talking to a Protestant who knows Greek. I love talking to Protestants that know Greek because you can get a Greek New Testament out and show it to them. And I can tell you, brother, so many times it's kind of an eye-opener. Mm-hmm. It was for me all those years ago. Oh, my goodness, I never saw that before.
I'm going to try to get Luke on, Kyle,
yes.
So thank you very much. Luke's in Seoul, South Korea. Luke, you're going to have to be quick with your question if you'd like an answer from Tim.
Yeah.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Tim, my question is this: with the current crisis in the Holy Land, this question has people have asked this question a lot.
Okay.
So, how do you explain to a non-Christian that the current Jews are the descendants of Abraham?
Yes, great question, man. And there's many ways it can be done, but one way that's simple is that when it comes to both Jews and Christians, our genealogies are everything to us. And I can tell you, brother, as one who goes to the Holy Land, I was there a year ago, and you may have heard my next pilgrimage to Israel just got canceled because of the war. But you can actually go to Israel and meet families who have lived in the Holy Land for 2,000 years. Those who say that, all the Christians and all the Jews were expunged from the Holy Land, that is simply not true. There are families that are still there. There are very few of them that have been there, and they're Christians. We actually met some of them in a place called Tibia, if I'm saying it right, Tibia. There's only, I think 2,000 left, unfortunately, because of the persecutions. But in the same way with the Jews, yes, they were expulsed and numerous times and such. But not only do you have those who remained, but very importantly, the Jews, like Christians, have kept meticulous records, genealogies, and whatnot. And so even though the persecutions were terrible and fierce, those genealogies remain. And this is why, even among the Jews, even to this day, you have the Cohen families that can trace their lineage back to the priesthood, for example. And there are reasons for that, because the Jews had such a great devotion to the priesthood and saw it as so essential that they had to keep those genealogical lines alive. And there are Jews to this day in the Holy Land that have those genealogies, and they believe, now I don't buy this, but they believe one day that they will revitalize the temple. And that, by the way, is a little discussion that goes on amongst Catholics. There are some Catholics who believe that will happen one day, and unfortunately they're wrong, but that's not something the church has decided on. I just happen to be right. It ain't going to happen, that's all.
Luke, thank you very, very much for the call. I'm sorry we had a little trouble connecting, but I'm glad we finally got you on. Tim Staples, thank you for a very fine hour. That went really quick for me. I don't know how it was for you, but...
Too quick, brother.
Too quick.
God
all right.
bless you.
Tomorrow, Tim's back. We'll see you then. God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.